He was a savvy entrepreneur who'd made millions in real estate.
He was sort of a wheeler-dealer.
My dad's business, it was some amazing stuff. He really had a gift for that.
They were sort of living the life.
Anything and everything he could want.
But sometimes everything isn't enough.
There was blood all over the floor.
There was glass everywhere.
It's up to investigators to determine, did the millionaire pull the trigger? Or was he the victim of greed and revenge?
She's been taken for a fool.
He was the sole heir as the sole child.
Is there some type of conspiracy here?
Friday, September 30th, 2011. It's a quiet morning in the wealthy seaside town of Jupiter, Florida.
You have some very elite and exclusive communities that are big dollar communities in Jupiter. A full range of mega mansions.
But while most of Jupiter's well-heeled residents are still getting ready for work, a security guard responds to an alarm at the home of real estate developer Lanny Horowitz, his wife Donna, and their son Radley.
Admirals Cove is a private community. It's got an exclusive golf club in it, and they have from townhomes all the way up to the super mansions in there.
It's on the water. It's a strictly gated community. It's monitored. The alarm system from the house would ring through to the gate.
And in this residence, there's multiple glass break alarms, which activate when there's vibration, the sound amplitude. In this case, 3 glass break alarms are what tripped the alarm.
The security guard comes to the home. Radley's the one who's, at the door with him, and he describes Radley as being a person who's, groggy, a person when you just encounter them when they're waking up.
He must have been just driving by on a patrol because, he was there incredibly fast. And I let him in the front door, and he went into the bathroom where my dad was.
The shower was running. There was blood all over the floor and the walls.
The glass was on the ground and scattered throughout the room.
On the bathroom floor, covered in blood, is a man the guard recognizes as 66-year-old Lanny Horowitz.
You can see one bullet wound on his side.
He describes, unfortunately, the gargling that we often see when people are very close to death, when they're gasping for air.
As Lanny draws his last breath, the guard rushes to call for help.
Yes, this is Admiral Security calling in because we have a dead person.
Lanny Horowitz's road to success began in Buffalo, New York.
My father got involved with his father at a young age with real estate. He apparently took to real estate like a fish to water.
Lanny was sort of a wheeler-dealer, real estate guy, always kind of looking for the next big real estate deal.
But while real estate was Lanny's passion, his first love was his wife, Donna.
My father was 15 and my mom was 14 at the time. As my father told me, he saw my mom coming down the stairs for the first time at his friend's house. And he knew right then that was the girl he wanted to marry.
She was a very beautiful woman. She was very stunning.
She was very caring and compassionate, but a strong woman.
They hit it off, and the rest is history.
The couple married in 1967, while Lanny was working his way through law school.
He never practiced law, but it was a huge help because when you're a developer, the joke is you're basically a professional defendant.
As Lanny started his professional career, he and Donna started a family.
I was born in 1974. I remember a lot of snow and a big yard.
Radley was the only child of Donna and Lanny Horowitz.
A few years after Radley's birth, the family left Buffalo behind.
I was 3 years old when the blizzard of 77 hit, and both my parents and a lot of other people at the time decided it was time to go someplace south, a little sunnier, and as my father used to say, where the weather won't kill you. And then we wound up moving to Jupiter, Florida.
They live right on the water. There's full water access to the yacht club, and it's got an exclusive golf club. It's a beautiful community.
In the Sunshine State, Lanny set to work building his real estate empire.
He sort of had his hands in a lot of different pots. He was a businessman. You had cars and real estate, and Lanny had money. They were sort of living the life.
But now, Lanny Horowitz's life has come to a sudden, horrific end.
The call came out initially of a possible shooting incident which had occurred in Admiral's Cove.
It was like something out of a movie, just, police and fire trucks and everything. And my mom and I are standing out in the driveway.
While Radley and Donna wait, investigators take stock of the bloody scene inside the mansion's master bath.
The scene is going to tell you what happened in this residence. So we take our time to observe and see what you have and digest what you have and see, is this what it's telling us, or is there something a little bit more to it?
There were no shell casings, and I did see a revolver. It had been moved by one of the security guys. So when he came in to do life-saving techniques, he moved the gun away.
The revolver was initially either near or in Mr. Horowitz's hand. So the first officers that arrived from the Jupiter Police Department thought that they were responding to a suicide call.
But does the evidence tell a different story?
There's a shower to the right, and there's an obvious bullet impact through the glass door.
Lanny was shot inside that shower. There was blood spatter, blood pattern, cast-off spatter inside the shower. The shower glass had a white towel hanging over it.
You can see a hole through the towel that correlates to the center of where the bullet went through the glass door.
I knew right away it wasn't a suicide. There's no way he would have been able to shoot himself while he's in the shower from outside the shower.
We definitely have a crime scene.
Coming up, was a killer lurking inside Lanny's home?
He told us that it was a tumultuous relationship.
Police in Jupiter, Florida have just found millionaire real estate developer Lanny Horowitz shot dead in his waterfront villa.
Just the fact that a crime occurred there is shocking. A burglary there would be shocking.
The community where this case took place, Admiral's Cove, is a very, very affluent community.
There are numerous amount of gated communities, multi-million-dollar homes.
You're looking at Jaguars, Porsches.
But now, police are looking at a murder.
It was readily apparent that this couldn't have been a suicide.
The bullet came from outside the shower. We don't have a suicide here anymore. We have potentially a homicide here.
Investigators also realized that Lanny had suffered multiple gunshot wounds.
There was so much blood, we couldn't see all of the holes in him until the medical examiner came and started flipping him over and doing what he does. That's when we noticed that there were many bullet holes in his body.
When the blood and the glass are removed and they see where there are 10 shots.
And we knew that the gun that was closest to him in the hallway couldn't have been the only gun unless there had been a reload, because it had a 5-shot capacity.
That's when we started looking for the other firearm.
As you're looking at those 2 bathroom doors, if you take a jog to the left, you then enter into the actual master bedroom, which was, the second gun was actually back down in the bedroom on the dresser.
The second revolver also holds 5 rounds.
It's 2 5-shot revolvers. All 10 shots have been fired.
The guns at the scene, along with other evidence, tell investigators Lanny's killer isn't an intruder.
There's absolutely no way someone else got into that residence. Every single window and door was sealed up.
We also knew that the alarm to the house did not go off until the first shot happened.
They call them glass break alarm, but really the concussion of the trigger being pulled tripped the alarm. And I could tell you exactly to the second when 3 of those rounds were shot.
You'd had to believe that person got into the home without tripping the alarm, committed the murder with guns that belonged specifically to Lanny and Donna, and then exited the home again without tripping the alarm. It just doesn't make sense.
All the evidence points investigators in one direction. Lanny's death was an inside job.
Which means our suspect pool is immediately limited to Donna or Radley.
When investigators approach Donna, she appears too distraught to give them a statement.
Donna's sitting in the front seat of one of their vehicles. She's got her knees up. She's kind of almost like hugging herself. And we introduce ourselves. She never speaks with us, never answers or acknowledges us.
She sort of made motions like, I can't hear you.
And they basically had no further real interaction with Donna.
Investigators are able to speak with Radley, however.
I mean, I was afraid to, ask the cops anything, and I'm like, is my dad okay, And one of the cops just kind of, shook his head but didn't say anything, asked me a bunch of questions and stuff.
I did a gunshot residue test on him, which detects any gunshot residue if he was to have fired the gun.
Then investigators ask Radley to come down to the station for a formal statement.
I appreciate that. You coming in here and all to give a statement. He came and he brought his lawyer, which is his right, and we had no problem with that. Especially the fact that even though he's bringing his lawyer, he was still 100% open with us and spoke with us.
Although, for all his openness, what Radley tells investigators raises plenty of red flags.
They asked if my dad was abusive, I remember that.
Never physical with me. Psychologically, but just petty and nasty,
I said, only verbally, only mentally. My dad could be a real needling prick. He had a real way about him.
He described his father as being sometimes abrasive, very short. He told us that it was a tumultuous relationship.
My dad was never warm, effusive, he used to say, I'm not a warm, effusive person.
Radley also admits that he and his father had suffered a major falling out a few years earlier, after Radley opened a gun shop near Jupiter.
I wasn't making very much money at it, but it was my passion. It was the one thing that I really, really loved, and he had given me some incredibly bad advice with the gun business.
Radley had wanted to order some kind of a kit that could transform a semi-automatic gun to an automatic gun. And according to Radley, he asked his father, who was an attorney, if he believed that it was legal, and his dad told him just order it.
I took his advice, and that did not go very well.
Radley ordered the part and ended up being arrested and convicted and got sentenced to federal prison for some short period of time. But as a result of that, he lost his ability to have the gun shop, and he lost his ability to own or be in possession of a firearm.
It was a shattering experience, to say the least.
But was it motive for murder?
He was very hurt by the firearm situation. He was still sour about that.
Radley, over and over said, hey, listen, I didn't do anything here. I didn't do anything here. I didn't have anything to do with this.
Coming up, investigators put Radley's family ties to the test.
Can't live with him, can't live without him.
Police in Jupiter, Florida, are investigating the murder of millionaire real estate developer Lanny Horowitz. and Lanny's son Radley has just revealed a possible motive.
What Radley told me was he blames going to prison on his dad. And then when he got in trouble, his dad was unsympathetic and basically laughed at him.
Now suspicious of Radley, investigators ask him to walk them through the events surrounding his father's death.
Let's go over again. You tell us in your words what happened that morning. There were lots of little details that he gave us of where he was in the residence, how he woke up.
He was laser focused on every act he did.
What he said was, I got up, couldn't really understand what was going on.
I heard shots, and I don't think I heard any. I pulled out earplug. Those orange ones are pretty good. And screaming. And I got out of bed, and again, I don't know how many. I can't say how many shots I heard, but, and again, if that woke me up or what.
He said, I had orange noise-canceling plugs that you commonly use at the shooting range. He said, I had those in my ear.
Even with the plugs in them, it certainly woke me up.
He said pulling the earplugs out, and that's when I heard the alarm going off. I rushed into my mom's room.
Radley tells investigators that he found Donna outside the bathroom door, apparently distraught with grief.
I just saw my mom screaming. I went to the bedroom door, and I could see my dad.
Radley said he sees his mom right outside that master suite area screaming and saying he was so mean. He's been saying he would do this. So he assumed this is a suicide. And he said that he could see his father's body laying on the bathroom floor. He said that he then asked his mother, can I get you some water? And he went to the kitchen and got her a bottle of water and gave it to her.
After taking Radley's statement, investigators returned to Admiral's Cove.
We went back in the house to see whether or not we could corroborate some of the things that he was telling us.
Somebody tells us what happens on scene. The point is not what they tell us, but does the evidence support what they're telling us?
There was one earplug he dropped in the hallway as he's going out, and the one was right next to his bed on the bedstand.
When we went back into the bathroom, there was a water bottle on the sink.
Everything that Radley told us, you could corroborate with a piece of evidence. So immediately that tells us, okay, he's being honest.
Radley was very cooperative, answering their questions.
Donna proves far less forthcoming, though.
She didn't give an interview.
Even at the scene, she wouldn't participate and have a general conversation out in the driveway.
She never spoke with any law enforcement directly.
Does that mean Donna has something to hide? Detectives suspect her first words to Radley might contain a clue.
She was, yelling like Radley. It was either he's so horrible or he was so awful. I knew he would do this.
He took that to mean that he committed suicide. In retrospect, who knows what she meant by those words.
Hoping for answers, investigators turned to the rest of Lanny's family.
In speaking with Lanny's sisters, we were able to get all those pieces of the puzzle of their life together.
Investigators learned that behind the millionaire couple's successful facade, their marriage had been struggling for years.
Once I graduated from school, stuff started to change with them, and my mom started to change. He was just always working, and she became resentful of that. And the more and more that my father got involved with it, the more that my mother felt neglected. Was the way that he had described it to me. And my mom told me that they were getting divorced.
Donna and Lanny had been married and then divorced. Then they got remarried and divorced again.
They had first divorced in around 2000, but they got back together and remarried, and it was down at a Justice of the Peace ceremony down in Palm Beach Gardens, just down the road from Jupiter, and I went along for that and got to see my parents Mary for the second time there. And then they wound up apart again.
However, it wasn't long before the couple reconciled a second time.
They did end up getting back together, and it was a lot of what you hear, just, can't live with them, can't live without them sort of thing.
At the time that this happened, Lanny had invited her into the house so that they could, according to him, be a family unit again.
The way my father announced it to me was, this weekend you'll help your mother move back into the house. And I was like, that's fantastic.
Although, according to Radley, his father had an ulterior motive: Donna's family money.
Donna's mother was very well off. Donna's father had played professional baseball and so had a good deal of money from that.
A couple of business deals hadn't come to fruition, so Lanny was sort of needing some money. The house was expensive to maintain.
She didn't see it as a loan to Lanny. She saw the money more as this is the way that they could live together in the family home.
I didn't know at that point how many mortgages were on the house in Admiral's Cove, but he convinced my mom to get $200,000 from my grandmother, and everything was pretty obvious what was going on.
This was nothing more than a ruse to get the money out of her, and she's been taken for a fool.
But did that mean Donna killed the love of her life?
It was clear that you had a woman who was angry and a woman who was fed up and finally broke.
Coming up, investigators uncover a game-changing clue.
We knew immediately that this was potentially an important piece of evidence.
Detectives investigating the murder of Florida millionaire Lanny Horowitz have narrowed their possible suspects down to two choices: the dead man's wife or his son.
Basically, we knew at that point we were dealing with, was it Bradley Horowitz or Donna Horowitz?
They were the only two people in the house when Lanny was shot.
Both Radley and Donna had compelling motives to pull the trigger. But when the results of Radley's gunshot residue test come in, it suggests he's not the shooter.
Radley had no gunpowder residue on his hands.
Could it have been washed off? Potentially. But I find it very doubtful that someone's going to then, immediately after those alarms are going off and security's already on the way, they're going to go and clean up their hands.
Just to be sure, investigators return to the house and perform a luminol test.
Luminol is a chemical we use to detect small traces of blood, maybe after a cleanup. I actually did it on all the sinks in every bathroom, the kitchen, and I think there was one in the utility room that I did also.
Lanny's sink was indicating of the luminol.
Could that explain Radley's negative test for gunshot residue? Investigators expand their search, looking for additional evidence.
They didn't know what happened. Is he covering for his mom? Did they do it together? Is there some type of conspiracy here between the two?
They further went through the home and they found her journal.
This was a personal journal of Donna's, so we knew immediately that this was potentially an important piece of evidence.
The early entries in Donna's journal reveal a woman happy to rekindle her relationship with Lanny.
It's very hopeful. She talks about how he's reached out and he wants to try again.
However, after Donna returned to Admiral's Cove, the contents of her journal started to change.
It showed her progressively getting more angry and just more upset about certain situations that were occurring.
They basically become very short entries about her daily interactions with Lanny and his lies to her.
There was mention of another woman, and you can tell that Donna didn't like it.
The other woman's name was Francine Tice.
Francine was involved in the real estate industry and was working with Lanny on a few different projects. The two of them were very tight, very good friends and business associates.
She was very, very sharp, very smart, and very much a type A, personality, a go-getter, much like my dad.
It developed into a very close personal relationship.
There was some suggestion that she was a mistress. We didn't really have any evidence to suggest that it was sexual or romantic in nature.
Francine vehemently denied having any sort of sexual relationship with Lanny.
Whether it was true or not, it was true to Donna. Donna absolutely 100% believed that Lanny and Francine were intimate with each other, and she documented in detail in that journal things that would support her belief that this was more than just a friendship.
Her entries in the diary showed, well, he's been with Fran all day. He goes here with Fran. He does this with Fran. It was clear that Fran became a point of contention for Donna.
The journal also makes clear that in the countdown to Lanny's death, Donna's anger of the alleged love triangle came to a head.
Donna said at one point in the journal that as things began to unravel quickly, Lanny said to Donna, "If I knew that Francine felt about me the way I do now, no, I would never have asked you to move back in the house." So she's basically heartbroken. He tells her she's got to move out. And I believe what the straw was, she finds out he's going to North Carolina, this last-minute business trip with Francine, and he tells her in no uncertain terms, you be moved out of the house when I get back.
There was a suitcase in the bedroom right outside the bathroom that was packed for him to leave on his trip that morning.
He was certainly ready to go, and I think that ultimately she said enough. You're not going anywhere. And it was sort of the last act of a woman's scorn.
You could see her getting more upset, getting closer to the date that Lanny was killed.
More and more layers start to pull back. The evidence is inescapable that, she absolutely killed Lanny Horowitz.
There was no question in our mind that this absolutely was Donna Horowitz.
On October 6th, 2011, 6 days after Lanny's murder, investigators placed Donna under arrest.
We had Donna under observation already by this point. Call was made, and they took Donna into custody.
She wasn't interviewed at that time, and she chose not to.
She was charged with first-degree murder with a firearm.
Coming up, will a jury believe that a mild-mannered 65-year-old is capable of murder?
It's not something that society is used to believing, that this upper-class white woman is going to go and just blast her husband 10 times.
Police in the seaside town of Jupiter, Florida, have arrested Donna Horowitz for the murder of her ex-husband, Lanny Horowitz. She's accused of shooting the millionaire real estate developer 10 times on the morning of September 30th, 2011.
Donna Horowitz was charged with first-degree murder with a firearm, and in the state of Florida, that's a mandatory life sentence.
It was clear to us, based on the evidence at the scene, that what took this from a second-degree classic crime of passion to first-degree premeditated murder was the number of the shots.
Premeditation, there's no time limit. It can happen in an instant, as long as it takes the actor to formulate the idea, the thought, the intent to kill.
Her trial begins in January of 2013 at the Palm Beach County Courthouse.
We informed the jury that you're going to learn about this family that lived a nice lifestyle in a beautiful gated community.
Admiral's Cove is a very prestigious, affluent area.
But according to prosecutors, the family's prestige and affluence masked a quiet desperation.
The events that lead to the morning of September 30th are tragic, but as old as time. And basically, to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's going to be clear to you beyond every doubt at the end of this that this was nothing more than a woman who was heartbroken and had had enough.
It was clear that there was tension, and my mom, you could see her losing weight and stuff as everything seemed to sort of be setting in with her over what was happening and what my dad had done.
It was always our position that she killed Lanny because she had a broken heart. You can feel her broken heart in the journal entries. That this was a woman scorned. This was a woman whose world was slipping away.
Prosecutors believe the final break came on the evening of the 30th, when Lanny announced he was leaving town with Francine.
Our supposition is that he's packed all his things and he's going away with Francine, and then she gets told, "You got to be out of the house when I return."
She came to a point of realizing that his behavior wasn't changing and that he was using her.
It was clear that she had been scorned and he had made a fool of her. He probably made fun of her and ridiculed her. And then he gets in the shower and has not a care in the world. And she basically said, enough's enough.
And I think she just snapped. She went into the bathroom, took both the guns, and while he's in the shower, she just unloaded the firearm.
That's the dance of death. Lanny was not standing still as he's getting murdered. He's ducking, he's rolling, he's weaving, and we know this because of the blood spatter everywhere.
She just continues to shoot. I think she was sick of the frustration, sick of all the comments he was making and the lies.
This is somebody whose world is slipping away, and they are outraged, they are hurt, they are upset. And the manner that this was done, the number of shots, this cries a woman scorned. This cries, love gone bad.
However, prosecutors claim that Donna's rage at Lanny didn't prevent her from trying to cover her tracks.
She switched over to that rational thinking pretty quickly, in that she hears the alarm going off and knows that she has to act quickly.
When Radley responded to answer the front door for the security guard, Donna had the opportunity to move the gun or do whatever, manipulate whatever she wanted to manipulate.
She puts one gun in his hand and then wipes down the other gun but puts it in the holster so people won't even draw attention to the fact that gun could have been used.
Luckily, they recognized pretty quickly that this wasn't a suicide.
But can prosecutors convince the jury that Donna is a killer?
It's not something that society is used to believing, that this upper class white woman is going to go and just blast her husband 10 times.
When Radley takes the stand for the prosecution, his stunning testimony just might be Donna's salvation.
He stood by his mom. He tried to justify actions.
I felt very bad for her. And I said a million times that if there was ever a case for battered spouse syndrome and temporary insanity, this would have been it.
Radley testified and remembered hearing Donna say he was just so horrible. He was just so horrible, sort of repeating that.
Radley never asked his mother if she killed his father. Radley never asked Donna, "Did you kill Lanny?" And the reason he didn't is because he didn't want to hear the answer. He didn't want to be the person who would have to testify and say, "My mother told me she did this."
He would never totally give his mom up. He said, "All I can tell you is it was only two of us there and I didn't do it."
Coming up, Donna repays Radley by committing the ultimate betrayal.
Here comes your mom, you're the person that's supposed to protect you, saying, "You did this."
The prosecution has rested in the murder trial of Donna Horowitz. The 66-year-old is charged with killing her ex-husband, millionaire real estate developer Lanny Horowitz, in the couple's upscale Florida home.
Our position was always that Donna Horowitz was losing everything, and ultimately she decided that she had had enough.
Her frustration and her hatred became so much that she decided that she was going to kill, the love of her life.
When it's their turn, Donna's defense argues that she wasn't the one who wanted Lanny dead.
The defense argued that it was Radley or that Radley had hired someone to do this.
The defense relied on the smudge of a thumbprint maybe or fingerprint on a gate leading out of the house.
Could have been anybody. It could have been one of us. It could have been a firefighter. It could have been a gardener. It could have been some maintenance person. It could have been anybody.
The defense was trying to argue that meant that there was an unknown killer and that this could have been a hitman hired by Radley because he had purchased this paperback collectible edition of some kind of hire hitman or something like that.
Whether he'd pulled the trigger himself or hired someone to do it, the defense argued that Radley had resented his father for years, especially after serving time on federal firearms charges.
The defense was that he was still angry 5 years later about this weapons piece, that he blamed his father for that. He's pissed at his dad for giving him that advice.
Defense dug into every issue that he and his father had ever had, every conflict that he and his father would have had. They questioned him and pushed him on it. It was clear that Lanny was not a supportive father, and every misstep that Radley took, he was critical.
The defense was basically trying to make out that Radley was the angry, disgruntled child, but he also had ulterior motives, potentially for money, for the inheritance from his father.
Radley was getting everything. He was the sole heir to Lanny Horowitz.
He was due to get $500,000 in a life insurance policy.
Donna's defense seems to be going down this road of Radley's the worst person in the world. He must have done it.
I don't believe for a second that Radley ever dreamed they would be that aggressive and vigorous and basically unrelenting, saying that he was the one that did it. Who does that to their own child?
It got hard after you're listening day after day. You did this, when you didn't. And it was a lot for him.
All the stuff that her defense lawyer tried to say, a hitman and all this kind of crap. And he was just trying to do his job. And his job is to get his client off any way that he can.
On January 17th, the jurors retired to consider their verdict. And less than 2 hours later, they announced their decision.
Ultimately, the verdict was returned for second-degree murder with a firearm.
The jury did a great job seeing through the smoke and mirrors and everything that was being portrayed and put out there by the defense.
The judge sentences Donna to 32 years in prison.
Given Donna's age, it's a life sentence, practically speaking.
We were very comfortable with the outcome of it and the sentence as well.
Donna's single-minded pursuit of retribution had not only destroyed her own future, it also devastated the lives of the people she loved most.
Which she did, completely blew her family apart. You certainly can't justify something like that.
In this case, unlike a lot of our cases, there's no good guy or bad guy. There was no winner in this.
Lanny lost his life. Donna will never get out of prison. Radley lost both of his parents. Everybody lost, absolutely. And she didn't have to do that. She could have walked away. She chose not to.
She was kind of trying to still live up to that lifestyle of the affluent Jupiter community, and I think in somewhat denial.
There's been a lot of people in this country that want to present this sort of tremendous success through materialistic things, whether it's a house, whether it's cars, whether it's going on boats. And this is a tragic story where once that veneer was pulled back and there was debt and triple mortgages, then massive stress starts to come in. And people aren't honest with each other. And people don't deal with the issues. They just misdirect them. They bury them. And sometimes they explode.
They were two overprotective mothers who'd do anything for their children.
Both appeared to have a lot in common, kids the same age, family people.
You can call them helicopter parents or tiger moms. They both had very hands-on parenting styles.
But when they turn their defensive instincts on one another, the results are deadly.
There was a lot of hatred between these two families. There is yelling, screaming. He says, she stabbed her, she stabbed her.
And investigators are left to determine who's to blame in the suburban feud gone wrong.
It was just like, how did this come about?
Both of these moms seem capable of just about anything.
Wednesday, April 27th, 2005. School has just let out in the Cleveland, Ohio suburb of Euclid when police receive a call about a domestic disturbance in progress.
I was in my office and we monitor all the calls through a scanner. At that time, we heard that there was a big fight on Crystal Avenue.
According to the caller, all hell had broken loose at the house next door to him. 15 people had engaged in a fight. They were literally outside duking it out.
Officers are dispatched to handle the altercation. But while they are en route, a second and more urgent call comes in.
There is yelling, screaming. The 911 operator can't hear most of what he's saying, but is getting enough down to when he says, she stabbed her, she stabbed her.
When the police got there, the scene was total chaos. A dozen men and women throwing punches at each other, literally a battle between two families.
I saw one lady laying down by the driveway. Looked like there was some type of problem going on with her. There was someone else over top of her, and all the other people were just milling around.
My sister talking about she can't breathe. I'm lifting up her shirt. I'm not a paramedic. I don't know what to do. I don't know whether to hold her chest or whatever. I just see the blood coming out. And I just see her eyes just going blank.
She needed medical attention right away, or else she was going to basically bleed out.
Police clear a path for EMTs to treat the unconscious woman. It appears she's been stabbed several times, but she's not the only victim.
As the EMTs were putting her into the ambulance, they noticed that the woman helping her was also bleeding.
I didn't know I was stabbed until the EMT said, take off your jacket, let me check your body. And they checked and saw that I was stabbed in my back too. So I get in the ambulance and I'm riding to the hospital, and I look down the street and the ambulance with my sister just stopped on the street. I'm like, what did they stop for? I guess she had stopped breathing.
The wounded woman identifies herself as 29-year-old Christina Barkley. The unconscious woman is her little sister, 20-year-old Vanessa McMorrick.
Vanessa was an irritating little girl growing up. She followed me around everywhere, just irritating and tattleteller. But as she got older, me and her got closer, you know. She was everybody's best friend. She's like the glue that kept everybody together.
Christina's daughter, Diamond, was especially close to her aunt.
I could talk to my auntie Vanessa about anything. Whenever I had a problem in school or with my mom or anything, she was the person I can go to and talk to. Anytime we threw parties, she was the one that planned it and was the first one there. She loved getting her hair done. So she was over our house all the time because my mother did her hair. She was just beautiful inside and out.
Few things were more important to Vanessa than family. So after high school, she began making plans to start one of her own.
She worked in a clothing store in nearby Cleveland, and she was able to get an apartment. Shortly after, she met a man named Robert. They started dating, and not too long after they started dating, she learned she was pregnant. Vanessa's big sister, Christina, already had children, but they both ended up being pregnant at the same time, so it was just one more thing that they could bond over as sisters.
They both had mood swings out of this world during the entire pregnancy. She was there almost every single day, and I'll never forget when she actually went into labor. My mom was right there.
She had her baby 2 months before I did. She didn't have that many friends. It was just family. It was just us all day long. If she wasn't at my house, she was at my other sister's house. We were just together all the time.
The extended family included Christina's husband, Michael, and their 5 children. Their home on Crystal Avenue was always bustling with activity.
Diamond was 12. Jonathan was 13. Zariana, she was about 5. And Zamian, he was 3. And Ozias was like 4 months old. He was a little newborn baby.
Between their kids, aunts, uncles, cousins, family coming over, it was just a very busy place.
So busy, in fact, that when their new neighbors, the Bergers, moved in next door, Christina barely even noticed.
Ashley Berger was, I believe, 32 years old and had moved to Crystal Avenue in June of 2005. She had 4 children. She lived there with her common-law husband.
I knew of them. I knew it was a mom. I knew it was a guy that lived with her, and I knew she had beautiful kids. I was in my own little world with my own little family. I didn't need no new friends.
Both families seemed content to live their lives in peace. But just a year later, their neighborhood would become a battleground. While Christina and Vanessa are rushed to the hospital, police try to defuse the situation between the two families.
Crystal Avenue is a really decent area to raise a family. It's kind of a bedroom community.
These are 2 suburban families that have gotten into this fight. I mean, these aren't gang members.
Coming up, investigators learn the history between the 2 families and discover how young love sparked a dangerous feud.
Yeah, he had a little crush on me, and I kind of, told him off.
Christina Barkley and her sister Vanessa are being rushed to the hospital after a brawl with their neighbors left both of them stabbed. But before an investigation can begin, authorities first have to pry the 2 families apart.
The screaming and yelling and invectives and swearing and everything that was going on, it was at its peak then. So they had to calm everything down. The way they do that is they put people in different areas where they can't, rile or incite other people.
While officers try to keep the peace, Detective Ken Kosinski is assigned to the case.
I had to talk to, hopefully, both victims that were up there and get their statement on what happened. When I got to the hospital, Vanessa they're working on her. She's unable to speak or anything.
Vanessa was stabbed 7 times. One of those stabs went through the lung and through the pulmonary artery, which essentially caused her to bleed out. She was also stabbed in the left arm, which severed the muscle, which rendered her arm useless.
While they're operating on Vanessa, detectives speak to Christina to find out what happened.
I went over, talked with her, and she gave me a statement on what had occurred and everything. And she said that she didn't even know she was stabbed. She thought that she just got hit in the back with something. She was a mess. She had the stab wound in her back, scratch marks on her face, but she was able to talk, and she was in pretty good health, considering
Christina is able to identify her attacker immediately. She says it's Ashley Berger, her neighbor, that came after them with a knife.
Christina says this wasn't just a random act of violence. There's been a history of tension between their two families, and it all started with a case of unrequited love.
Christina had a daughter named Diamond, and Ashley had a son named Deontay who was about the same age.
So our kids went to the same school. They was in Euclid Middle School. They 12 or 13, but this was a big kid. He didn't look his age. Neither did his cousin. Neither one of them looked their age. Meanwhile, I got two little skinny kids, that was way smaller than him.
According to Christina, the trouble began when Ashley's teenage son Deontay made it clear he wanted Christina's daughter Diamond to go out with him.
We were in the same grade. I guess, he had a little crush on me, and I didn't like boys, so of course I kind of, told him off. Like, I don't want that, I'm not ready for that.
She's 12. She ain't about to date nobody. So he can crush all he want, but it's not going to happen. So after she turned him down, this is when everything started happening.
So, of course, then he got upset and didn't want to play with us anymore and stuff like that. Next thing we know, he started picking on us.
He would bully Jonathan, my son, and Diamond, my daughter. Every day, coming home from school, going to school, he would just do really horrible stuff to my kids.
This one day, we were at the bus stop waiting for the bus, and he took a snowball, it wasn't even a snowball, it was more like ice, and he threw it at my face.
Christina tells police that's when she finally decided to confront Ashley Berger about her son.
I go knock on her door, and I try to talk to her. It wasn't a good conversation. I can't even recall what she said, but it wasn't good.
The boy's mother just did not believe that he was capable of that.
Since Ashley refused to do anything, Christina took matters into her own hands.
My mom did go to the school and talk to the teachers. She actually tried to get us both out of the school and go to a different school. They wouldn't do it.
I talked to the principal. All he can say is keep them away from each other. They ride the same bus. So there was no way of keeping these kids away from each other, especially if we lived next door.
With the school declining to intervene, the bad blood between the families continued to grow.
There was an incident back in February of 2005. Ashley punched Christina in the face.
Her son came home one day from school and told his mother that my kids was bullying him. She came over, and I couldn't talk to her at that moment because I was with the baby. I said, well, hold on, I'll come over to your house in a minute. So I go over into her house. She didn't answer the door. So I see her significant other walking down the street.
So Christina goes over and starts to talk to Ashley's boyfriend about the problems. Ashley did not like that one bit.
She came out and said, get away from my man. Why are you talking to my man? You want him or something? And then hit me in my face with my 2-year-old in my hand. Yes, she did. My 2-year-old fell to the concrete and hit his head on the ground. I'm sorry, world, but
The feud just gets worse from there.
More incidents, more bullying. Christina said that Ashley's family would yell at them every time they were outside.
Calling the police don't help. Going to the school didn't help. Talking to that parent didn't help. My plan was that summer. I was gonna move. I was out of there. And Nessa was moving with me. We was about to get a house together.
Coming up, the neighborhood feud once again erupts into violence.
All I remember is my mom and my aunt were kind of like being pulled by the hair, and I'm literally just standing there crying.
In Euclid, Ohio, 20-year-old mother Vanessa McMorrick is undergoing emergency surgery after being stabbed 7 times. Meanwhile, her sister Christina is giving a statement to police.
When I spoke to Christina, I expected the worst. I expected screaming, crying, unable to speak. She was relatively calm about the whole thing. She was very matter-of-factly, this is what happened. This is what I want to get down. This is what I want to tell you.
April 27th in 2005, 3 days before my birthday. My birthday is April 30th. Getting ready to have a sleepover. My aunt came over we were going to go shopping to get me a birthday outfit because that same weekend that we had the sleepover, we were going to have a party for me.
To go pick up Vanessa from her house downtown in Cleveland. And me and her, we went to the grocery store, went grocery shopping, and then I dropped off my nephews at the bus stop so they can walk Diamond and Jonathan home so they wouldn't be picked with.
She warned them to go straight home and to not start anything with Ashley's son.
But when they got back, Ashley and her family were looking to start a fight.
As we pulling up into the driveway, we just see her and 3 carloads of people. And these people just got out the car. And then as we're walking out the car and her boyfriend's on the porch, he jumps over his porch and get in my sister's face. He just saying everything but the right words to her. He is really cussing my little sister out.
So it began, they going back and forth, and it just escalated from there.
Despite Christina's earlier attempt to keep their sons apart, the Bergers claimed Jonathan had attacked Deontay.
You're just cussing her out. I mean, why you had them kids try to jump my son or something, but nobody tried to jump your son. I went over there and tried to break it up, get away from my sister's face, and he starts pushing me.
The other house started emptying out, and then you had all these people all over the front lawn, wrestling, fighting, hitting, biting, whatever they were doing.
All I remember is my mom and my aunt were kind of being pulled by the hair, and I'm literally just standing there crying. I don't know what to do, and they're just all fighting.
Christina says that's when it must have happened.
I don't even know when or where my sister got stabbed. I can't even recall when I got stabbed. All I know is at the end of it, Ashley Berger done stabbed my sister. I'm she got a knife. And it's 20 people piled around me.
Christina said that Ashley ran back inside, but the fight kept on going. She had no idea how badly Vanessa was hurt.
I see my sister laying on the ground. I see my husband, he's on the phone calling 911. Meanwhile, the kids are in the house. Her son is there. Her 1-year-old son is there. You just hear kids just crying and crying from our side. And my sister's just laying on the ground. She's getting heavy in my arms. I couldn't hold her no more.
With Vanessa still in surgery, detectives returned to Crystal Avenue hoping to verify Christina's story.
Christina was certain that Ashley was the one who stabbed them, but her memory of the events was not entirely clear. She even says that she had the knife at one point, so at that point, they don't know anything for sure. By the time detectives had gotten to the scene, the officers had calmed everyone down. That was a huge task. There were at least 15 people involved in a knockdown, drag-out fight.
Inside, investigators find their suspect, Ashley Berger.
We didn't know for sure if it was her, but we had a real good idea that it was because everyone was pointing at her. The whole opposite clan was pointing at her as the person that did the stabbing. James Bruning was one of the officers that responded to the scene. He went in there, asked where Ashley was, and people in the house said that she's in the kitchen. So he went in the kitchen area, confronted Ashley there, saw a knife in the sink where she was standing at. He asked her, that's the knife that she used to stab this person? She goes, I don't know.
So unfortunately, Ashley didn't elaborate, and all they could do was take her into custody.
We took photos of the inside of the house, where we found the knife at. We took it, bagged it, and then we were going to send it to Bureau of Criminal Investigation out in Richfield, Ohio. They do some follow-up investigations. They do testing on forensics and stuff like that. We would want somebody to test it that has better equipment than we have.
It will take several days for the test results to come back. And in the meantime, police are finding it difficult to get a clear picture of what happened from the other participants.
Basically, it was conflicting statements as to what happened, who was involved, who got stabbed, who was doing the stabbing, and everything like that. So at that point in time, we decided, all right, we're going to make everyone fill out a statement form, take everybody into the police station.
Coming up, investigators discover there's more to the story than what they've been told so far.
From the Berger's perspective, it was Christina and her family that was the problem.
There were 34 reported incidents.
It's been a little over an hour since 20-year-old Vanessa McMorrick and her sister Christina were rushed to the hospital with multiple stab wounds. Their neighbor, Ashley Berger, has been named as the assailant, but police still have no proof.
When we got everybody to the police station, we separated everyone because we didn't want anyone to start fighting or wrestling. We had a couple interview rooms, and so that's where they sat. And most of the people really weren't too loud after they were at the police station. I think they realized they're just going to have to make the statements and submit to whatever happens after that.
With so many people to interview, the police decide to divide and conquer. They start to collect statements from one family to compare to statements of the other.
And what Ashley's family told police was very different from what they'd heard so far.
Ashley Berger was a 32-year-old female who had moved to Crystal Avenue in 2005. She had 4 children, and she lived there with Matt, who was her boyfriend, and the father of 2 of the children.
She had no criminal history. She was a stay-at-home mom. She had a kind of quiet, calm demeanor. She just didn't seem like the kind of person who was capable of this kind of violence.
Ashley would say that she really didn't want bad blood. They were her next-door neighbors. She was happy to have a nice place to live with her children.
From the Berger's perspective, it was Christina and her family that was the problem. Police records reflected that Ashley had called the department several times to seek assistance. Ashley claimed it was her son that was being bullied by Christina's kids and not the other way around.
Ashley claimed that after she reported the harassment, Christina became more and more combative.
In February of 2005, where Ashley punched Christina in the face over some dispute between the children. And she actually admitted to it, but indicated she felt threatened.
To hear Ashley tell it, it was Christina's family that were the violent ones. They were the ones shouting threats and slurs.
And those threats soon escalated into acts of vandalism.
Ashley stated that in March, she placed these stick-type markers along her property line so that there would be a clear demarcation. She wanted to keep Christina's kids off of her property.
Ashley filed a police report claiming that her son saw Christina's husband kick those markers down.
Euclid is a community of about 50,000 people. They have a very good police force. They've responded to these incidents. They certainly want to try to resolve any sort of conflicts that occur. The officers had spoke to both families, left, and as far as they knew, everything had settled down.
Police may have considered the matter resolved, but the truth was, neither mother seemed willing to back down.
Investigators were looking at these incident reports, and it just demonstrated that there was so much back and forth between these two families. None of it was shedding any light on what really happened. What these reports did tell them was that both of these mothers were extremely overprotective of their children, and they would be willing to do just about anything.
Ashley's family tells detectives things got so bad, she even tried to get a restraining order against Christina's family.
The indication was that the prosecutor would be in contact and they were going to try to mediate this or try to work with them to try to resolve these sort of conflicts that were going on. For whatever reason, they didn't seem to want to compromise. Each stood their ground, and that's the way it was going to be.
The only thing both families seem to agree on is what caused the fight. But investigators still don't have a clear account of what happened. And the one person who might be able to tell them isn't talking.
The only two people who were involved in the fight that hadn't given statements yet were Vanessa and Ashley. Since they had Ashley in custody, they decided to make another run at her. But before they could do that, they got some bad news.
I received the call that Vanessa had passed. She had bled out.
Once they was done stitching me up, the doctor came in and told me there was nothing he can do. She passed away. I couldn't even see her body. I just had to leave the hospital.
This meant that there was no longer an assault charge, and Ashley was potentially looking at a first-degree murder charge.
Both families are immediately informed of Vanessa's death.
We lived right down the street from the police station, right down the street. And I'll never forget it. When she came home, me and my mom sat on the stairs and we just talked. She said my aunt had passed away, and we all just broke down, and it's never been the same since.
The other family was kind of taken back, basically. I think they were a little shocked at the whole thing, too. I don't think they expected what happened to happen.
But Ashley Berger has the most surprising reaction of all.
When they told her at the Euclid Police Department that Vanessa had succumbed to her wounds, she blurted out, "I didn't mean to do it."
She goes, "Oh my God, I didn't mean to kill her."
It's the first time that she said anything to them since they picked her up. Whether she meant it or not, it amounts to an admission of guilt, so they arrest her.
We had her processed through the jail, photographs, fingerprints, and all that.
Coming up, Ashley drops another bombshell.
She was 5 months pregnant at the time.
Ashley Berger has just implicated herself in the stabbing death of 20-year-old Vanessa McMorrick. And Euclid police already have statements from the victim's family confirming Ashley was the one who did it.
I spoke with a few people from the Berger side. I don't believe any of them had mentioned anything about the stabbing, but they knew exactly what happened because they were the ones screaming for Ashley to get back in the house. So they knew. Everyone understood. Everyone saw. Except, if I don't say anything, maybe it didn't happen.
At that point, detectives are convinced that Ashley probably just got fed up with Christina and her family, and she just snapped. They're looking to get a full statement from Ashley to wrap up the investigation.
However, after police hear what Ashley has to say, they realize there's more to the story.
The relationship between Ashley Berger and Christina Barkley was massively deteriorating over several months. Things just kept getting worse.
There had been threats. There had been hatred because of the police being called. There had been things said, well, if your son stopped picking on my son, he's younger and he's smaller and everything. You know, he's trying to do the right thing, come home, not get in a fight.
Ashley doesn't deny the bad blood between them, but she claims Christina and Vanessa were the ones who took things too far.
Ashley told police that she tried every legal means at her disposal to protect her children, but she drew the line when they threatened the life of her unborn child.
She was 5 months pregnant at the time of the homicide.
According to Ashley, Christina's family not only knew she was pregnant, they used it as another way to intimidate her.
Ashley didn't look pregnant with a big belly at all, but when you live next door to somebody, you tend to know their business.
The two sisters had allegedly threatened to stomp the baby out of her.
Vanessa kept saying, I'm going to kick that baby out of you.
The fights between the two families had escalated to the point that she was afraid they weren't just threats anymore.
So when Christina's family came into her yard that day, Ashley was determined to protect her baby, no matter what.
On April 27, 2005, around 3 p.m., Ashley Berger called police to say that Christina's nephews were harassing her children.
Ashley claimed that Christina sent her two older nephews to the bus stop to harass her sons and basically threatened to beat him up. The police came and left, but Ashley was so worried she wanted to stay at her parents' house.
But before her parents arrived to pick her up, Ashley says Christina and Vanessa found out she'd called the police on their nephews.
Every time that there was a confrontation or fights on the bus or whatever, Ashley would call the police. This enraged Vanessa and Christina. How dare you call the police on my son, my nephew? They didn't like the fact that police were called to break up fights between school kids.
Christina and Vanessa were ready to have it out with Ashley, but about that time, Ashley's parents got there.
Ashley claims that as her parents arrived, Vanessa and Christina's family started screaming at them. At that point, Ashley's boyfriend, Matt, intervened.
Christina and Vanessa got out of the van and tried to break up the fight between Matt and the nephew. Then the other house started emptying out, and then you had all these people all over the front lawn, wrestling, fighting, hitting, fighting.
Fearing the worst, Ashley grabbed a knife from the kitchen.
Vanessa and Christina came up on the porch, and she just did everything she could to protect what was standing right behind her, her small children, and right inside her, the baby.
Ashley comes busting out of the house with this knife and starts flailing the knife all over the place. Christina grabs the knife, and now she's wrestling with Ashley. Ashley's got a hold of her hair. Somewhere in this melee, Vanessa got stabbed.
If what Ashley says is true, she was acting in self-defense. But there is little evidence to corroborate her story.
Other than the next-door neighbor that made the initial 911 call, none of the other neighbors were willing to come forward and help the police.
The neighbors didn't want to talk. They were afraid. All they kept on saying was, it's just a mess. I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to be dragged into this. And that was basically that, or they wouldn't return the calls. You'd leave your card, make a phone call to them, nothing. And it was just, that was it.
When the test results came back from the knife found in Ashley's kitchen, they're not much help.
There were no fingerprints on the knife. The blood, there was no real blood on it. So it it was washed off and it was clean.
There's no doubt that Ashley had the knife. Ashley confessed, but the police have to figure out if it was self-defense or murder.
The strengths were the admission, the finding of the knife immediately afterwards with blood in the sink, the admission I didn't mean to do it when Ashley found out that Vanessa had died. Probably the weaker part is dealing with statements. Everybody had a different story. Each family sort of had their own take on what occurred and what didn't occur. So really we looked at the evidence. That pool of blood in front of the living room window was very telling.
We had enough at that point in time to charge her. There was no more investigation needed. There was nothing else to do.
Prosecutors decide to take the case to a grand jury.
What the state did when they took it to the grand jury, they knew that they had a tough case, and so they had an indictment for voluntary manslaughter and one for involuntary manslaughter.
The defense certainly cross-examined the witnesses for the state cross-examines the witnesses for the defense, and the jury listens to it and makes a determination of credibility.
The grand jury ultimately agrees with the prosecution's case against Ashley Berger. On June 2nd, 2005, they bring indictments for murder and 4 counts of felonious assault.
Ultimately, they decided there was enough evidence to support the charges, so it got scheduled to go to trial.
Coming up, the two families face off for the last time in court.
A woman shouted, "In court, I'm gonna kill Ashley's baby."
"32-year-old Ashley Berger has been charged with the murder of Vanessa McMorrick. But since she is 5 months pregnant, her lawyers argue to postpone the trial.
The court agreed and allowed her to be kept on house arrest until after she gave birth.
On August 29th, 4 months after stabbing her neighbors, Ashley gives birth to a baby girl. And another 3 months later, her trial finally begins.
Even though it had almost been a year, emotions were still running hot between the two families. Deputies were on high alert, constantly monitoring the situation, trying to make sure that another fight didn't erupt. Prosecutors described Ashley as a woman driven by hatred. Ashley had harassed Christina and Vanessa for several months before stabbing them in a fit of rage.
The state points to numerous police records of Ashley's aggressive behavior, as well as the medical reports regarding her victim's injuries.
My sister was stabbed 7 times. She was stabbed, one of them in her arm. She couldn't even move the arm to even save herself.
There were some defensive wounds, but it was the one death stab, if you will, was 3 inches deep. It was well into the chest cavity.
Prosecutors also show the jury photos of the large pool of blood found just outside Ashley's front window.
Ashley was inside when the fight began, but Vanessa was stabbed outside. That meant Ashley made a conscious choice to fight these two women.
I don't think that there was any question about it being self-defense. Ashley was in the house. How could she claim self-defense when she was removed from everything? She came out of the house with the knife, with the intent to hurt somebody with it.
But the defense insists that Ashley was acting in self-defense, and they believe they can prove it.
They used statements given by Ashley's family to the police to support their claim that Christina and Vanessa had been the ones who actually started the fight.
Matt Macenti came there. Shortly before he got there, there had been a fight between Ashley's son and Vanessa's son. They were picking on him, and he had I believe, 2 sisters with him. And they get there, and Matthew gets out of the car, and here comes Vanessa. Now, mind you, nothing happens on the property of Christina, not one thing. Everything is on the property of Ashley.
Testimony about Christina and Vanessa's threats to kick the baby out of Ashley were vital to the defense's case. It demonstrated that Ashley had reason to fear for her life and the life of her unborn child.
Ashley's attorneys asked the jury to see her not as a murderer, but as a mother, desperate to protect her child.
Ashley claimed she ran in the house to get a kitchen knife just to scare the other group of people, and things got out of hand.
The intent to stab and kill, I think it was more of an intent to frighten away and leave me and my kids alone and cut this out.
On November 21st, 2005, after 3 days of deliberations, the jury returns with its verdict. They don't believe Ashley was acting in self-defense.
There were no other weapons around. I mean, everyone was throwing punches. Why would she stab Christina in the back as she's walking away? I mean, that's not self-defense. It just isn't.
However, the jury doesn't believe she committed murder either.
They were pretty undecided about who was telling the truth. And in the end, it was a mixed verdict. Ashley was convicted of the manslaughter and assault charges, but she was acquitted of the more serious charges of murder.
Heat of passion. That was the verdict. 5 years. That's all she got. 5 years for killing somebody that is not here no more.
I do believe that justice was served. I would have liked to have seen more time, but, there's a saying that justice is blind. Everyone has a different perspective.
Wonder if I could bring them to live. I could bring my lover. And baby, you make me wait. Now here I go, going back on the road. Now here I go, going back on the road. Now here I go, going back on the road. Now here I go, going back on the road. Waiting you. Back there again, I sat there looking out of the window. Wonder if I could bring them down. If I could bring my love now, baby, you make.
Shorty, if you really wanna go, then you gotta take me the mess. I tried to soak in all the years and take it all in, but I come up for a breath and cry. I gave my drama, gave my simple, gave my friends a helping hand. I bet you know that they are dead. I wish I could tell you this. The talk is not a time.